special guest with us. We got Craft Beer Joe in the house. He's going to be talking a little bit about his blog. He recently just did an article about New England IPAs and kind of how the style, where it started and kind of where it's evolving to. So we're going to try 2 of those later in the video, and then just talk to him a little bit about where he started out and kind of where he came from. So Joe, I'd just be curious, how long have you been blogging? I've been reading maybe like for a little over a year now, but I was just curious kind of like how long you've been around and where you got started.
Yeah, exactly. I've been writing the blog articles for about a year.
Okay.
Maybe a year and a half is when I started, but no one reads them the first couple months that you write them, so we'll call it a year because that sounds better. I fell in love with craft beer, and I had a coworker who was really into it as well. We talked about it a lot, and he was really into social media, and kind of helped me discover this world that's out there with craft beer on social media, specifically Instagram. And I really got into that, posting stuff, chatting about beer on Instagram, and to me it seemed like a natural segue to want to talk more about it. And so I said, well, if I want to talk more about it, where can I go to talk about it? And I thought, well, hey, let's write about it and see if we can take it anywhere.
Nice.
So what was the beer that got you into craft beer?
So gateway beers for me, if you go way back, Sam Adams Cherry Wheat was something I fell in love with a long time ago. I remember being somewhere and could order by the pitcher, and it was just one of those things that didn't taste like beer. Growing up, I think we all thought beer was the macro lager, and that was one of the first ones that I tried that it had some unique flavors to it. It's a wheat beer, so it's a little bit different, and I'm a big fan of anything cherry flavored, so that I think is the beer that really kind of turned my direction.
Yeah, that's a funny one. We were actually talking about that in the store the other day, because a lot of people have named that as like their gateway beer coming in, but I haven't heard of a lot of people going back to trying that later. So we may have to do an update video.
Does it exist?
Yeah.
We should definitely get
it's still, it's still.
I just have, we don't carry it here, so I just have never had it.
We may have to pick it up so we can all try it again and see if it's
all right.
Fun, yeah.
what we remember.
It's been a few years since I've had it, so
I'm gonna have to try that one now. All right. So you pump out a lot of articles, or a lot of content, which I really enjoy. How is it that you determine what you kind of want to write about? Is it just people you're at the bar be like, hey, I'd like to know more about this, or is it just kind of like feedback on your Instagram page, or where does that come from?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I try to write about a lot of different things. It seems like, though, when I look back over the past year, I've written a lot about New England IPAs, a lot about sour beer as well. So a lot of it's kind of what's trending, what people are talking about, what people don't really know a lot about. A lot of the article topics come from online, from social media, either Twitter, Instagram. Somebody will send me a question, and then I'll just say, hey, I don't know much about it, so let's go find out and help spread the word.
Nice. Cool.
Yeah, so this last article about New England's, it was an interesting take, because I've seen a ton of articles about New England's, but I don't know that recently I've seen anyone break it down into the different categories that you broke yours down into. So do you want to explain kind of why the breakout? I guess first, what is the breakout, and then why that breakout? So not everyone's tried a New England IPA. That's one of the things I've really tried to remind myself of. I've had quite a few of them, but they're not always easy to get. And a few months back, Lord Hobo started distributing in the area, and I was able to get Boom Sauce, and I was discussing that one with somebody, and they made a reference that it wasn't quite the same as what we see locally from New England IPAs, and it gave me this idea that is a New England IPA. They call it that. That's kind of what they focus that style on, but it's different. And what was different about it, and why things have kind of changed. So there's just been this evolution. So I broke it down into the idea there are these old school New England IPAs, and I would put Boom Sauce in that category, Heady Topper into that category, that are unfiltered IPAs. They're fruit forward, but they still have some of the piney bitterness in them that you would get out of an East Coast IPA, versus a new school New England IPA, which is what we see in the 16-ounce cans that everyone lines up for. Those are the hazy ones. So another word would be a hazy IPA, that they look like orange juice, and they are all tropical citrus fruit. They're very heavy, very soft mouthfeel with almost no bitterness. So that's kind of the second category. And then we've seen over the last couple of years this new idea of what a milkshake IPA is. And it's kind of taking that
new school concept to the next level, where they're adding fruit and lactose and all these things to give you more sweetness, even heavier body, and being even more fruit forward because they're actually putting fruit into it now.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because Heady Topper is kind of credited as the OG of New England. They're really the ones who started doing it. A lot of why New England's became what they were is because of the water quality up there too. So very heavy in calcium and sodium, which I think down here in Cincinnati makes it very hard for breweries to replicate a lot of times, getting the water treatment right. So it's been, I've almost seen this evolution in Cincinnati where there's been so many breweries starting to try them, and they were not so hazy, not so fruity, and now people are starting to figure out, and Cincinnati's producing some awesome New England IPAs. And yeah, they're a little bit different from Heady Topper, a little bit different from what you find from Lord Hobo, but it's taken on its own life here in Cincinnati as it probably has across the country. Absolutely. Anywhere as well. So we've got a couple beers here. We've got one of our new schools. This one's from Listerman that make a show, and it's called I Left My Wallet in El Dorado. And then the other one next to him is from Nowhere in Particular, and not sure how many people have heard about Nowhere in Particular just yet. A lot of these beers are coming straight into Cincinnati. The brewer, Chris, he is actually what we refer to as a gypsy brewer. So he was traveling around the country for a while using extra capacity at other people's breweries. And he would do one-off beers. He really only does one-off beers, doesn't repeat them over. So he just calls them batch 1, and we are currently on batch, this one's batch 17. He also has batch 18 out right now, which is a stout, so not going to be in this video, but pretty cool to see some of the things that he's pumping out in his last 4 or 5 batches have been right here in Cincinnati at Rivertown Brewery, about 40 minutes north of here. So, what do we want to try first?
The El Dorado first?
Yeah.
All right.
So for those that have not had a New England IPA, we've kind of mentioned it before, they're different than your traditional IPA. And the fact that their color is a little bit different, they're going to be a little hazier, they're not going to be as clear, they're going to be fruit forward, and they should have lower bitterness. Again, IPAs typically were the king of bitterness. These should have maybe a little bit in there, but it's much lower, more sweetness and fruit forward than hop forward.
It's funny you kind of mentioned the more approachable IPA and like just the way that you can approach them. But we actually have a regular who has never like had an IPA in like 2 years, and I forget that I'm so involved in the market and like I'm always like trying new things, and I forget people just don't know certain things, and I forget to tell them certain things. I'm like, have you had a New England yet? He's like, no. I'm like, oh, dude, like IPAs are way different now. Like you'll probably love them. And he's like, tried it. He's like, oh yeah, IPAs are good now. I'm like, yeah. It's a changing market. You gotta try it. Dive back in.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting because I have a buddy who still hates IPAs. He worked here for a little bit in the summer, and so my approach with him, anytime I wanted to try and get him to drink an IPA, was to find a random bar that had an IPA on nitro because it smoothed out that bitterness. Very few places actually do that, but now it's easy. He really likes New England IPAs, and that's because it doesn't have that aggressive West Coast hop bitterness to it. And for a lot of the brewing process for these New England IPAs, people use very little hops in the boil, and boiling hops is what extracts those alpha acids and gives it that bitterness. And so most New Englands are done with dry hopping, which gets all that the hop flavor out of it, the citrus, the floral notes, without taking any of the bitterness, which is why I think a lot of people are starting to get into these that may not get into your traditional West Coast style IPA. So let's drink them.
Let's drink, fellas. Definitely hazy.
Yeah, Listerman did a good job on this one. We had them in
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, and we had this one on draft actually, and I was a big fan. So this is done with El Dorado hops.
Correct.
They also use Eureka too. Is that Or is that something else I'm thinking about?
I don't know if they list them out on here.
Right under the name list of
Skyrocket.
Skyrocket.
Amarillo.
an Amarillo.
Okay.
So yeah, most of them are going to have hops that are primarily, again, fruit forward,
Yeah.
tropical, or citrus. You get both of that in this. I get a lot of citrus in this one.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm such a huge Citra hops fan, and they also at the same time that they released this, they released Just a Beer, which was a New England with all Citra. And so I'm comparing to two different kinds of citrus and fruit notes to it than the Just a Beer, but this one, I mean, it's awesome. So much of that fruitiness on the mouthfeel. The nose is very similar, and then it's got a ton of those like fruit esters coming out.
This one's really well carbonated too.
Yeah.
Some of them lack a little bit of carbonation.
Okay,
And this
yeah.
one I really get that on the tongue, where when you drink a stout or something like that, you kind of have that velvety feel. It's real slick. This is not. This has got that carbonation kind of bites
Like
the tongue a
how-
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, like how a beer kind of like used to taste.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
So one thing I kind of like to do, so since we're talking about the difference between old school and new school, we didn't have an old school in the shop. And then the milkshake, we should grab some extra glasses and pour them side by side,
yeah.
Take a look at the difference between new school and milkshake. So this is the first time I've had
Same.
this one. Definitely a lot clearer than I was expecting out of the beer. I don't know, Joe's looks.
Got some haze to it.
Joe got the bottom of the can, so he probably got all of the milkshake part.
Yeah.
Sometimes the style of New England, they can settle a little bit in the can.
Yeah.
So that's something to kind of be aware of. But yeah, there's a little bit of haziness, but not as heavy
Right.
of a pour as I thought it was going to be.
For sure. And I guess that's
It's funny. Maybe I saw a picture the other day of it. I was like, oh, that looks delightful.
it looked like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a training point for anyone who's pouring a milkshake IPA, whether at home or in a bar. You can pour out a little bit, swirl the can a little bit, and then pour the rest of it out. Get everything, moving back around, take it out of suspension, and that didn't seem to help very much. But good try.
Good try, right?
So this one's done with mango, vanilla, and lactose.
Yep.
And you can smell the mango on it for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a very ripe mango. It's
Yes.
not like a fresh mango.
Yeah.
It's very ripe.
And it does have, like, even though mine is fairly clear, it does have a very creamy body, and I'm guessing that's because of the lactose that's in there. I don't get much vanilla though.
No, really vanilla. I can taste the lactose. Lactose just always stands out to me, no matter what beer I'm drinking. More lactose on the tongue than mango, I'd say.
I feel like I guess I don't really know what lactose tastes like. I always just perceive it as like a body or a mouthfeel
Really?
kind of thing.
I can always taste it in my beer.
Is it just more sweetness or?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mango in it. There's no denying
yeah.
the mango in it, both in aroma and flavor. I expected a little more sweetness out of it, and I think that's where maybe we're wanting a little more vanilla.
Yeah.
But it's still very
Yeah.
good. If you're a mango fan, you're going to really enjoy something like this.
For sure. So final take. What do you think between the two here?
For me?
Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the El Dorado would be the one that I would go with over the Milkshake IPA in this case. And I think I like mango, but I don't think mango is like my go-to fruit flavor in a beer. So I think that's why the El Dorado kind of stands out to me.
Sure.
Yeah, I would go with El Dorado as well, and I think it'd be more approachable to the general person who maybe hasn't had a IPA recently or New England IPA.
Yeah, I would agree. My palate kind of goes to the El Dorado as well, but the mango one, if you're a fan of mango, there is a ton of mango coming off of this. So I think if you were a fan of that fruit, you're going to like this one a lot. Both of them are really good for me, and I would definitely go back to them.
Yeah, absolutely, I'd agree. Again, even if you just like tropical fruit flavors a lot, I think the mango
Sure.
Milkshake IPA is a good option.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cheers. Thanks for coming out and doing this.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Skull Bikes.
I saw city.